And here we are. We are back. It is the first Friday of June in 2022, and it's episode number 3 of When Ops Meets Dev. How you doing, Robbie? Swamy? How you both doing?
Hey, very good. Not so great, actually. I got a little bit of a cold, but I'm doing my best.
It seems to be that time of year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That we always get a little bit of a sniffle, and we have to just try and soldier on. But no, it's good to be back, Swamy. How you keeping?
Oh, pretty good. Eagerly waiting for this episode. There was a pause for two weeks, but now eagerly waiting for this episode. Fully charged, energized.
No, absolutely. Yeah, like I say to all our viewers, I know we've got a few people there waiting. Hello to everybody if you're joining us on YouTube Live. Please do join in the chat as we work through this session now today. Any questions or observations you have, put them in our chat, and I'll interrupt Swamy and Robbie as we're going through this solution now. So I guess for those, maybe it's your first time joining us, I don't know if we want to give a bit of a quick recap. Robbie or Swamy, I don't mind who wants to do this now, but just to give the viewers a little bit of a 2-minute recap of where we've got to now as we're in episode 3.
Swamy, let me invite you to do that because I'm going to start off with the Docker thing afterwards.
Oh yeah, sure. Hey guys, so we started with a plan to create an entire e-commerce solution, which is from scratch. It's not like we come up with a fully baked thing. We thought we start with there are 10 to 12 microservices, a minimum which we are planning to do, and we chose products microservice. We started with that, and we chose MongoDB, and we started our first session on discussing like what is MongoDB. We can have MongoDB installed on local, or you can use Atlas or MongoDB as container. Then we started with the minimum features in Web API, the layered architecture, strongly typed configuration, Swagger, app settings versus secrets.json, the repository pattern, and the dependency injection. We did a deep dive demo in the dependency injection. Jonny will post the playlist URL where you can see the previous episodes, but I'm just giving you a high-level handshake. And then there's a local execution, how many ways we can execute this solution using IIS Express, Kestrel, Docker, and Docker-Compose. That was our first episode. And the second episode was another action-packed where we introduced the Serilog, which is a third-party logger, and we started seeing that. And then next thing was after deploying the solution or after executing the solution in Docker, we did exec into the Docker container, and we saw that the seri logs, that log file is getting created inside that seri log. That was pretty fantastic. And the next thing is we introduced the Postman collection, and we said that we set a context that why do we need Postman collection. When we have multiple environments, you deploy the same binaries to multiple environments, will be this tool will come handy to go test pretty quickly in all the environments. And we did a small exercise: how do we execute this in the Mac OS, how do you execute it in the Ubuntu, in the Linux world. So with this, we executed it in Windows, Mac OS, Ubuntu, and we did a war cry saying that, hey, .NET everywhere. And then we did it touch up on the shell scripts a little bit, but we go heavy on those in this episode, in this episode 3. And back to you, Jonny, then I'll come back.
No, that's fantastic. And I guess we may as well just jump straight on in. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, the whole solution of these microservices, I think what the aim of the video series is to do is to, each component, we're looking to kind of try things several different ways, whether that's, kind of building a microservices. How do we deploy that? Do we use, we've demonstrated using local Docker. We're going to work our way through all the different, as many different ranges of deployment as we can, I guess, guys. Yeah, that's the plan anyway. So, let's get on with it then. Episode 3, what are we looking at today then? Robbie, should we start with you?
To start off, we were going to actually to just cover some bases, make sure that everybody is at a, that we have a standard level of understanding looking at Docker commands. Swamy, I was going to invite you to go to the Docker commands document to work from there.
Sure.
Okay. Docker wants to know about the domain of actions, especially as they're going forward. So like a lot of places where you would normally have been able to just do Docker PS or something, you now have to indicate the domain. So like Docker container for PS. That's something that I wanted to highlight right at the beginning. So I think you'll see that in our commands that we're making sure there to always indicate the domain under which the Docker command is applied. And the first thing you want to do with Docker is to get an image or to have built an image and then to run it, right? So in this case, we're looking at just running the Docker image for Mongo. It's got the commands right there at the top, Docker image pull Mongo. The Docker image indicates that it's a domain of the Docker images that the pull command is for. The action itself is the pull, and then Mongo is the tag that it's looking for. I think that's the name of it. Whatever it is the container that we want to grab, or the image we want to grab to build a container. And then in the next line there, you've got the container run, and then we're binding ports. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the internal port to the external port there, right? With the colon.
Host port versus Docker port.
Host port versus Docker. Okay, so it's external versus internal.
Yeah, host port versus Docker port.
Very good. And then the name there is a tag that you'll be able to use to reference it afterwards. And then the last part of it is Mongo, which is the image. The last command in that set, which I'm hoping he'll actually go through and run these, the last command in that set is SBOM, which is a new command they've just come up with, which is the software bill of materials. And if we run this, we'll be able to show you that it's not the bill of materials that you used in building your project, like if you were the Mongo team necessarily. It's the bill of materials for the things that compose the container. So it includes, we'll be able to see there are system level components that are indicated. Swamy, are you able to run those 3? Or at least the last one?
Oh, yeah, sure. I need to switch to this one.
Just command line.
Yep. So I just want to switch that so that I can have this preview both at both the places. Let me come back over here.
It's not that. I just want the SBOM.
Okay, SBOM. Right.
Yeah.
I'll go that. And
so if you have Mongo already, you can do it directly. But if not, you can do the Docker image pull.
Okay, Docker for that. And see that it does the bills of material for the Mongo.
Yeah, it is taking a
Takes.
second. Do you not have one running?
Oh, it is. Oh, I think I stopped it. Good catch. Let me start that.
I just wonder if maybe that affects its
Oh
speed,
yeah,
because it seemed like it was pretty fast for me.
I know. I did that mistake. It's my problem.
No,
Uh,
that's all right.
yeah.
What I wanted to show is that you're actually
Uh,
able to see like system resources that are installed here.
oh, it is. It is here. This the Mongo is already running.
Hmm.
So I don't know why this guy is taking uh, Docker as from Mongo. Um, or else we can check here. It should be pretty fast. I don't know why this guy is taking that much time on my machine. Um, it shouldn't take. Let's try for the Redis. Uh, Docker.
Can you just run through the all three commands that you had in that list? I know that it seems a little repetitive. Maybe change the port numbers because you probably already
Yeah,
have something.
yeah. I think let's do this. First command we are bringing in the
Oh, you know
first.
what? It should actually
Yeah,
you should see a progress meter that says loading image if it works the way mine does. So hopefully
yeah.
we should see very quickly.
I think I lost the Mongo image. That was the reason it was unable to pick that.
Yeah.
I'm bringing in. I think now I can execute this software bills of material on Mongo. I think
Okay.
I lost that. Okay,
Yeah,
now.
caching issue.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Software bills of material Mongo.
Mongo works. That's right. You don't need to
Yeah,
do it on the running container. Now you should
right.
see a spinner here. You're not seeing it. I invite you guys to run this on your own. You'll see, for example, things like sysv init utils from Ubuntu and Ubuntu keyring and things like that on that particular image at this moment in time.
I
Um,
think we will try doing it from here when we have this Mongo.
okay.
Is he giving us the bills of material? No, he's not giving an option to do it from here. Uh, yeah, there you go. It took a little bit time because I think the
Oh, wow.
caching issue, Robbie, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
See, that's where. Let's flash it for the benefit. Now, we do that bills of
But
material,
it's going to
software bills of.
re-verify if you do that. I was happy with just that list. I just wanted to show what that list looks like.
I'm sorry, I spoiled it. I'm really sorry for that.
That's all
Okay.
right.
Mm, okay. So,
So
so the
the
key
important
thing.
thing to note here is that these are basically shared objects or things that are installed in the system, and and they can include the materials that are necessary. They likely do include the materials that are necessary to get your system up and running, including your solution. Um,
There you go,
yeah.
Robbie. You can see
Awesome.
this.
Thank you, Swamy. That's perfect. So let's just find one with the Ubuntu on it, and it doesn't start with libs, and it doesn't look ridiculous. And so there, you got MongoDB actually has got a. So there are packages in here you can see that are coming directly from the system. You can see that in
Here, you can see that. Some of the things is this Go modules.
yes. So there is a Go solution here as well, and then a whole bunch of straight from GitHub packages that I guess are about that have to do with Go because they're straight from GitHub.
He's doing this add user
Yep.
uh,
So that's
and
an example of a system tool. That's very good. All right, Swamy, thank you. I think we demonstrated that. Can we go back to that document for the eShop products Docker list,
yep.
just to walk through? The next thing
Mhm.
that you had was verify the IP address of the container. So the middle command in there, I don't know if you ran it, but if not, I think you did already have one running. So can you just do
Yeah.
a Docker PS, a Docker container PS, and see if you've got shop Mongo?
Yep. Uh,
Okay, you can actually you can search. I guess it's
Yeah,
different.
here it's products DB, it's
Yeah.
products DB. So I can quickly do that. Come back over here. Uh,
Right. So that container name is the name that you gave it. So it would be shop Mongo, I think, in the example on that document, which is in our repo.
yeah,
But in his case, he needs to make that products DB.
I have to make this products DB. Let me copy that instead of typing and doing mistake. I will do a copy paste, which I'm very comfortable of.
Yeah. So the inspect command is one of the commands that you get. Common container commands. Others are PS or logs or exec. The PS shows the containers. It's like ls. I think it shows the containers. Logs shows logs from the running container, and then exec will allow you to execute a command. Here at it, I mean on the virtual host. Here on this in this container, inspect displays detailed information about a container, right? So for example, in that execution, you can see the IP address. Oh, did you not actually name it products TV?
I think I did something wrong, so I just copied that ID. Uh, what happened? It's I'm going to copy the other command.
Yeah, it works
This one?
flawlessly, as you can see. But
Yeah.
if you go
Right.
up, would you scroll up a little bit, Swamy, while you're here? If you go back to the documentation, you see that middle line there, the container run, the name, and then after name, we have Mongo, which is the name of the image that we're going to run as a container, right? So the name
Right.
shop Mongo is what you would use. That's what the container name or ID is. The ID there is and the Docker PS is the number that you're pasting.
Yeah. So I know what is that I did it. Actually, these containers shouldn't be running. I should have stopped these two containers because this comes as part of the Docker Compose, and those are the things which we see here.
Okay.
It's in the
But we're
Docker
like
Compose.
going through all of these commands at the same time as a consequence of doing this. So there's going to be a little bit of repetition in this process, and I want to apologize for that. But
Yeah.
um,
So actually,
largely, I think we'll be able to show. You should still be able to get one of those things to give you an IP address. It should be basically anything in that PS list should be able to give you an IP address. I would
yeah,
think.
I think now we will be able to hit it because
Me as well.
I changed that. Now we can go back to our shop Mongo guy, this guy, and we'll start this container over here. This guy is running.
Okay, so
Uh,
now we don't have the port
yeah,
number collision. Okay.
now I can do this operation Mongo.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. It was my mistake. So that will be part of the Docker Compose. That was the reason we're not able to hit it. But because you can see this, that was not at the root level.
Hmm.
When you see that particular image or the container, that particular container was not on the root level. If you go here, that this is the root level. The Docker Compose is the root level, and the container is inside that. That was a mistake.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
actually,
can
I should
you
have stopped it.
demonstrate? Is there any easy way to demonstrate from the external host, from your own host, how
Oh
that
yeah,
IP relates?
yeah, we will be able to do that because see this.
Okay.
What we can do is we can ignore this piece. I will remove all this. We don't want to go. What we can say is Docker container inspect the container. Okay, now this gives you bunch of things, and one important thing is IPv4 address is this one,
Hmm.
and this is a gateway address, and this is a IPv4, and you can see that. And apart from this, you can get deep into the weeds, getting into this to find out what is the volume, where it is getting mounted, is it a temp volume or is it a permanent volume, which we will do a deep dive. Back to you, Robbie.
Awesome. Thank you for showing those details. If you go down, I think the next one that I had here was PS, right? So PS is like, and also you have logs in that group, so I'll do both of them. PS is like LS. So far as I'm concerned, PS is like LS. It shows the containers. I think there may be
Ex-
a difference, but
exactly, exactly. See this. The PS is equivalent to LS. We'll show that real quick to them.
yeah.
Uh, uh, That is that, and you do an ls. Both are equivalent commands.
All right. So
Uh,
this is showing you your containers. I have running containers is what it indicates. Um,
ah, ex-
and then
Go ahead, Robbie.
logs can show you the same logs that you see if you look in the GUI for the container. So I was wondering if for this, if you could show a comparison between the logs from the output from that logs command, where you'll
Yeah,
see some very JSON looking pieces, and then
right.
look at it in the GUI.
Oh, I just wanted to highlight one piece. The
Oh,
difference between Docker LS or PS, Docker container. Now we become a good citizen. We use Docker container, the object, and then command. Is
yeah.
that when you do a container PS, it shows only the running containers. When you do Docker container PS hyphen A, even the dead containers you can see that. That means you see that some of the containers has exited, and these
Yeah.
containers are up and running. So these are some of the things you can come at the top. You can see that the status, something which says that up 34 minutes, up 12 minutes. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Some of the
Long
things
running
are,
processes.
yeah, some of the things which are exited, they are dead containers.
Hmm.
Even if you want to see the list, sometimes you try to create a container, it blows off. It says that port already exists or something. The name already exists. You don't know. You do a Docker PS, you don't find it. You need to use a Docker PS hyphen A.
That's very good. What's the Docker PSQ while you're talking about those flags?
Oh, Docker PSQ, it gives only the ID.
The IDs. Okay, so it's the quick format.
IDs of this. And this can be used as a weapon or a tool if you want to remove set of containers. You do this Docker remove containers and then
But
give
I'm
this
looking at
queue. All the all the containers are gone. It's a destructive commands, guys. Please use it with cautious. I mean, we are, as Jonny told, we are trying a lot of things. We are experimenting, and whatever we are learning, we are coming and putting it on the table. Many ways to do things.
okay, I'm already over on time, so I'm trying to go a little bit quick here.
Mhm.
Um, so here you
Sure.
can see, if you look very closely at just one of these entries, you got a T, and then there's a date. You see the date very clearly, right? And then an ID. And then a message in there. So largely speaking, there's a structure to this that is in common between these lines. And you know that there's got to be a way to make sense of that. Your favorite JSON browser might do, but let's just look real quick by comparison to what we see if we look in the logs in the GUI.
Yep. So we'll keep this. We'll come back over here and then click on this, and you see the logs over here. So whatever the logs which you're seeing here in the GUI versus here on the command line. Back to you, Robbie.
Okay,
I'm
so what
coming
I was going to
into.
point out about that is that in both cases, you don't actually see a formatted JSON output. This is JSON because that's the logs that we tend to write, or that Mongo tends to write out to its log file. But some other logging system might have more like a line item, like a ledger, sort of a log, rather than a series of JSON objects. I imagine. Uh,
I
so that's for logs. The last one is container exec. So we want to be able to show that you can run commands directly on this is a virtual host. The containers are actually virtual hosts.
So now, when we come back over here, so whatever we are showing the harder way. If you have a Docker desktop, all you can do is go to the container and click on this CLI that does the Docker exec. So Docker exec IT interactive terminal and the container ID. What do you want to do? Are you comfortable with bash or sh? You specify bin bash or bin sh. Okay, so let's show them the harder way to do it.
Okay.
That when we use the Docker, they went into the sh, we came into the bash. Both are
Could you do
same.
an ls since you're in root right now?
What's that?
Can you do
ls.
an ls? Yeah,
Yep.
because you're in root. So we can see that probably doesn't look like a Windows file system. So you're clearly in a virtual machine. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right. So that's there. What is the other command? Cat os hyphen releases or something?
Oh,
Uh, uh,
I'm not remembering how to do that, but you could
Yeah,
do uname -a or something would give you details that that are
yeah.
specific to the
There
type
you go.
of
Yeah, you name.
operating system running.
Yeah,
Yeah. That do
yeah,
the -a just because it actually gives you it gives you
yeah.
details that
This
you
guy.
actually care about if you want to run that.
Right.
Just as a bit of take home, I did say about the logs that is the shape of the Mongo logs. I don't know if that's actually true or if that's a wrapper for Docker. I don't know if you guys can correct me. I made the assumption that it's not a wrapper for Docker because the Docker GUI doesn't do anything with those JSON logs. It's not formatting it.
True. I think so. I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah. So I
So
think
now,
that's the Docker section of the
oh,
documentation.
there's a very important things is we did an ls and we did ls hyphen slash bin folder. So that's pretty important. Now, where is our guy Mongo? Back to you, Robbie. I'm sorry.
Well, okay. I wasn't prepared to do that part, but I can take a look. I see that you got Mongo there.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but I was just going to do the Docker part, I thought.
okay, okay. I'll take over then. That's this is the ls bin, and we can find that Mongo executable over here. Now, what are we doing right now? So now I'm executing the Mongo CLI. Now we are entering into the Mongo version. It's Mongo version 5.0.5, and then when you do a DB, that shows the current DB which is there. Now show DBs. What all the databases which exist over here? Like a show DBs, it says that catalog DB, product DB, admin, config, local. These all different databases are there.
So it's just like
Now,
any normal database installation where the software that's installed can host one or more databases, and you happen to be connected to one based on your configuration whenever you log in, but you can switch databases once you're logged in.
exactly. Now we'll say that use. I'll say that use T products DB. I don't want to be like that now. It has switched to this one. One thing I observed, I might be wrong, but when I once you create that and try using it, like do a show DBs, it doesn't show that until you create a collection for that. Okay, so once you do the collection, I observed it. I might be wrong. Uh, okay, let me paste that over here, and I'll products. Let me create the products, and now I'll do a DB. So it shows now it shows that T product DB. This is what I observed. Good guy. Now
Yeah,
I say show DBs. Now it shows that temp products DB. Okay, that's
yeah,
pretty cool. Uh, and now let's come back to this volume mount. Okay, so the entire thing is now that we have created this, uh, now that we created it. So what happens is this will, whatever the container is a read-only image, and it has got a thin writable layer. So whatever you write it, that goes as part of the temp storage. So what happens is once you create a container, you use it, and maybe you have a production logs on an API or a worker processee or a data store or a Redis cache or something, which cache might not be the thing. Please exclude the Redis cache. I'm sorry for that. But database and application logs or some other important things which you want to write it in the storage. So in that case, what we have to do is we need to back this container with a storage which is outside it.
yeah.
Okay.
That also allows you to separate concerns. You can separate the maintenance of the container image from the data which it is maintaining by writing it to a shared external source, right? To a mounted line.
Right. So just because if we delete this, the problem will come, but we will explain that. We'll explain that. So what will happen is exactly follow these commands. You'll get through this one. Once we create it, what will happen is every time you create a container, it will create a new volume mount. So where do you find that volume mount? One of the way to find the volume mounts is once you go to volumes over here. Okay, once you go to the volumes over here, you see these are the volumes which
Have a wonderfully easy to search for name.
Yeah, I know this is like a mnemonics. It's very
So
tough to.
can you pop out? Can you show if you do a search there for products DB in the section where you were seeing all the different volumes with just random numbers, and you look for a container that that has. Can you do products DB here? That's what I meant.
No, the
Right.
the volume's name should
Okay.
be that, which we created in our previous exercise.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one which we created. Is this the one, or what was that we created it? Let me see in this documentation. We recreated it with the volume. We called it as MongoDB persistent store. I think something like that we called it. I think I did a cleanup of that. Okay, I did a cleanup of it. That never mind. We'll redo that. At least this piece we can redo this. Okay, but
No,
what
Swami,
we can
we're half over. We can't do that.
okay, we can do that. Okay, no problem. Now that what will happen is once you create that command, you see that the volume will be persisted on your hard disk. It's not part of the container. Now it is writing to a hard disk, which is a permanent storage kind of thing. Until you destroy your hard disk, this will not be available, but rest of the things it will be available here. Please follow this. We'll see that we might be able to do this quick volume mount creation in our next episode. But let me go back to the track and come to the second section, configuring the configuration. So what does this configuring the configuration means is in our previous session, we created some of the configuration. If you go and see that, we had a strongly typed configuration. We use that strongly typed configuration. What does that mean is like whatever the MongoDB settings, like you see that the connection string, database name, and the collection name, there are three different properties are there. And similarly you might have the similar thing, the redis entries or the storage account entries or any kind of configuration. If you go and see the example.app settings where you can see this, there are the collection name in for the MongoDB settings. So similarly for some other thing you might have some other set of fields. Hypothetically I'm telling you're connecting to SQL server or some other server where you're taking 5 different parameters. So you can go and access this using individual pieces. How do you access that? So if you want to access this, I can do that builder dot services dot configuration builder dot builder dot configuration, and then you might be able to access that because
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
that's how we do access this one. Okay, so if I do it and if I want to access this, I will come and copy this Mongo settings, and I will have to play with this magic strings. So anytime I do a mistake, instead of copy pasting, if I do something like a misadventure, okay, so
And,
now it
and you have to
it
create that. You have to put in a colon here too, so you can't just copy. You have to actually be involved in the formatting of that string. So it's a
I
really
know
not a very
it's a painful. Yeah, it is a painful process. Now imagine it's two variables or three variables, but it is a painful process. So what we can do is, as part of the strongly typed configuration, you can create a class. You can create a class in your. I mean, we created everything in the core project, but if you come to the configuration, if you see this MongoDB settings, I have this all these three things, and anywhere I need this settings, a piece of the configuration object, I can get this get section, the MongoDB settings. That means it gives me this entire section, three variables or 30 variables. It doesn't care. If you have a corresponding object, it gives me, and I load it as part of this. I'm adding it part of the singleton, and I'm giving the interface so that anywhere you need this, if you come back to the uh, product context, if you come back to the product context where you're creating this, I'm accessing this DB I MongoDB settings. That means I'm accessing this interface where you have already loaded this as part of the dependency injection. So anywhere in the solution you want to access, all you're saying that, hey, give me this settings. So it
Yeah.
exactly gives you.
So that won't be available, if I understand you correctly, in the program.cs. It won't be available until after the add singleton, right?
Exactly. After this line 28, you can access it anywhere in your solution. That's one way. There are multiple ways. The other way is that as part of the configuration, there are some default things which will be coming in into the picture when you create. When you create this, these are the default things which you will be able to access it. I wanted to show you that. Mm, create this web application builder. In this web application builder, if you see this, one of the things will be the configuration manager. So if you get deep into that, into the weeds, there you can see that what all the things which will it will come. So I'll see. I want to quickly show that this is very very important. Uh, Four. It is a pretty important things. We're all what all the things which are available. So the settings file, app settings file, it comes from the environment variables, Azure Key Vault, app configuration, send it through the command line, in-memory objects, in directories. These are some of the places. If you see that when you do the create builder, so this guy, what does the create builder does is it gets it from the command line, or it gets it from the environment variables, it gets it from the secrets.json, which we are heavily using. We don't depend on the app settings, we depend on the secrets.json as well as this app settings. So apart from this, see, there's something like these kind of things which comes as part of
So
the environment
hold on just a
variables.
second. You said something I
Yes,
thought
sir.
was just worth highlighting. The reason that we don't put it, we put it in secrets as opposed to app configuration. It's just because there are types of things that you wouldn't want to check into your repository. Those things you don't want to put your in your app settings.
True.
You would put those instead in secrets so that they can be kept isolated and developers can not worry about leaking secrets.
True. I totally agree on this piece. So other important things is like you can access this is what we have seen, that Mikey and these kind of things, like if you have multiple level you need to do colon colon colon. Instead of that, better to have a strongly typed one. And apart from that, you can do INA files, which we used to do back in 2006 and above. We used to have an INA files. We used to work with those INA files. And other important things is like you can create load some files which is not coming part of this list. So how do you generally do that? Okay, that's one of the thing which we will focus it at this point of time. This is our future microservice, but just wanted to give you a quick glance over here in this oscillate API gateway. We just working behind the scene. But if you see that in this configuration, there are a lot of oscillates are there. I might be pointing to, if it is a development environment, I need to point to one location. The IP address can be something else, and the host and the port number, the combination, the schema and the host combination, sorry, host and the fully qualified domain name will be different. If you go to the development, it might be different, like I'm doing this one. Or if you go to the Docker, it might be different. So we, at this point of time, we don't know. In this scenario, what we have to do is we have to load this. So any of these file names was not mentioned in the default list which it considers. So in this case, how do you tackle this? This is one other way to do this is builder.webhost.con configure app configuration. So whatever the app configuration which it doesn't support it by default, now we are overriding that behavior. We are saying that, hey, consider these files also as part of your app configuration. So once if I put a debugger here, I mean, we are not going to do the entire thing, but just wanted to show that how many ways this how many ways this uh, configuration can be configured. I think I'll switch it back to I need to put a debugger here in the line number 8 instead of line number 14. It
Hmm.
was my mistake. Let me try that because I want to show the difference, like what. Yeah, good that we put it here. So what all the configuration things which it considers by default and what is that it considers now. Let it hit that. Come on,
Do you
come
need to
on.
step to 10 or?
No, I just wanted to, I'll just stop it and okay, I think it is giving me the control. I think it is creating the container. It's taking a little bit time. Now see this. Now if I come to this builder, if I come to this builder and just go into the configuration builder, oh God, it started it. Come on. Now, if I come to the builder and the configuration object, now the default, by default, we spoke about some of the things, the sources. There are 6 sources, and those sources, the configuration manager, the sources you can see that 6. What are those 6? We saw that some of the things we saw that the memory configuration and the JSON, the changed configuration, and some of the things are environment variables. We saw that in the Microsoft documentation. But as we spoke, something which you want to do it outside of those default things. Now, if you come back and check this configuration, the sources are 7. You saw that? Now the number of sources has bumped up. So we
Hmm.
said that apart from whatever the things which you do it by default, hey, consider me also as part of the JSON configuration. Say that come and consider these oscillate files. See that? So we said that drag all these files because the environment is development. It is taking this development.json. But even though you have multiple files, but we are
Hmm.
saying that whatever is your environment, this one, environment name, go grab that
Where is
environment
that
and give that
ocelot?
JSON.
Where is that ocelot file? Oh, it's Docker ocelot.development.json right there in configuration. I didn't
Yeah,
see.
inside the configuration. I mean, if it is prod, it will consider this. It will consider this. Or if you have playing with your development environment or playing with your Docker, it will be this one.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's a fantastic concept which I really like it to use that. And
Yeah, that
Robbie,
does look really nice. That reminds me of something in Angular that we have too. You can set up in Angular JSON. You can set up different environments in your Angular JSON, and then run with different environment variables mapped in your development environment or also for production.
right? So people will see that pretty shortly. Robbie and I, we started working on the client side of this application, and to a decent extent, we have it, but not in a presentable situation. But we want to focus on this first microservice. We want to push this off the doors, and before bringing in either the oscillate or identity server or a cart microservice, we want to bring in the UI first. So you see that 3 different containers. One is the data store, one is the middle tier, one is the front end, and then we'll bring in the oscillate. So a lot of containers will be playing with that. Back to you, Robbie, on
Okay.
section 3.
Yeah. So for section 3, I just want to take a pause here and a little bit of a breather because that was a lot of information that we went into. But you notice that we've transitioned now to focus on the source code here in this project. And in C# they have that there is a NuGet package you can get. I think it is for called AutoMapper, which is useful for particularly for REST endpoints. It allows you to take a object, and whenever you take an object and you relate that object to another source, um, you like to another output, like in a REST endpoint as an example, you want to take your object and you want to expose it. There you sometimes you don't want to show all of the pieces. You might only need certain pieces in that transaction, so you have to strip those, and you would write some sort of a transform to map the object from the input source to the output, right? Um, so we can write a map function to do that manually, but the automapper allows us to specify little more really than just the properties that we want for that object, and just use the automapper on output. So this actually does the same thing that we would do ourselves, but it gets rid of a lot of the boilerplate of having to actually do it. That's why it's pretty cool. Additionally, you can do non-direct translation, which you would expect. You would do this manually for sure. But like if you have a list of other objects that also have representations, and you only want some of the child objects or child dependencies in your representation, or you want to combine properties, it provides various means of doing that. So serialization and filtering, and as well as decorators on properties that are in the output object, can be used to specify, for example, whether or not a output object should come from a different source than its name, so that you get renaming of a property. Or you can say, don't count this whenever you're doing, validation. You can put in an ignore tag. So let's go into the details a little bit. Let's look at if we can, look at the setup here.
Yep. So I think this is done. I'll close that. So first, I will close all these things and bring those entity versus data transfer objects. Okay, cool.
The automapper is attached pretty simply. Okay, so here we're looking. Let's just start right here. While we're here, you have at the bottom 4 properties on a product, right? This is our product class, and if we have a get products, or we have a get product endpoint, we want to represent those products, but we don't want to represent necessarily all the data. Like here, the last 4, created by, created time, modified by, and modified time. That may not be details that we want to expose to the end user. Here we have a data transfer object, which is the object that we're going to be using to represent that data on our output, on our endpoint, right? So it's going to have all of the same properties in there which we intend to actually display to the user, but none of the other ones. Now we need to look at the mapping. Oh yeah, so we do need to make sure that it's installed, and this here you can see in the NuGet package manager, the 2 that you should be looking, or that we had used for the automapper and the dependency injection. So you need to make sure that you have automapper set up in your project. It's as simple as just getting it in NuGet. Which you can get by right-clicking on the project and going to what is it, NuGet packages. I don't even know in Windows. Yeah, manage NuGet packages. Thank you. All right, very good. So yeah, now we're in a mapping config where we provide a mapper configuration. This allows us to expose on the product's DTO details from the product. And then the reverse map at the end, you could imagine, instead of reverse map at the end there on line 22, that reverse is like, embedded in the create map. They could have done it that way so that you had like a create reverse map, and then it would give you 2-way translation so that you could take input as well as output. But instead it's done this way, and I think this is just as clear really. You create the map, and then you can also reverse the map so that you get both directions for translations. You can take a DTO and produce a product, or you can take a product and produce a product DTO, which is the data transfer object on your endpoint. Yeah, so in here we'll get to see where it's attached, and you'll notice on line 30 the little to-do there. On my local host here, I have a to-do to actually migrate this in, so in a similar fashion. So it doesn't necessarily. This is the sort of it is there, isn't it? It's line 30. Anyway, we grabbed. I apologize. So that it's actually there. That to-do is the one that describes this. We'll show where we were keeping our own custom service configurations separately. But here we set up a mapper, and in creating the mapper, we execute, we enforce that translation, so it knows how to do its mapping between those objects. And then with build services, we add that service, we add the mapper so that it can be accessed.
And the key thing is, as Robbie and I, we do pair programming every Saturday, and that's when we try to improvise this every time we get a new idea. We thought that we'll write an extension method and move all these 5 pieces of configuration, the repositories and the context and the mapper, as well as the strongly typed configuration. We thought that we'll write one extension method, which does the entire application of this microservices dependency, this particular product's microservice dependencies. Everything should be done. I think we might cook it up in the next episode, and let's show them the final piece. How do you do the
How do you actually
transformation?
contain that? Yeah, make use of that the DTO.
Yeah, that will go to the repo. Inside this repository, you can see that take over, Robbie.
I'll actually let you, if you don't mind, I'll
Okay,
let you
right,
describe
yeah,
that part.
sure. So the repository, because as we already loaded this as part of the dependency injection here, we said that IMapper, we are loading
It's
this
already
mapper
exposed.
object as a singleton, and we are saying that add automapper to the entire assemblies in the current domain. So we went into the repository, and then we added this IMapper, and then we bought all the products from the MongoDB, and here we say that mapper.map, and we are saying that, hey, okay, take this list of products and convert that into list of products DTO. That's it,
Yeah.
one single line.
Yep. And it's smart enough to know, even though it's being specified with a generic to look at a list, it's smart enough to know that the interior pieces, and it knows to go deep into the object, not just look shallowly,
Yep,
or at least that
they're
deep
doing
into
a heavy yeah, they're doing heavy lifting for us. Okay,
yeah.
and again here, I might act as a devil's advocate. Um the repository might not be the right place to do this transformation. There might be a business layer where the repository layer can split the entities and let the business layer or the controller decide whether to do what kind of transformation. Because now that what is happening is, if it is from the repository, if an admin guy who's coming in here, for admin guy I need to give all the products including the date time created, who created it, who modified it,
Right.
but that might not be applicable for the customer. So we just, I
Okay.
mean, something we are doing it, and then we do a brainstorm, and then we'll modify that. Back to you, Robbie. Anything to add on that?
No, I agree with that. I think that that's one. I mean, that really comes down to how you decide to manage responsibilities related to administrative roles and whether you use the same endpoints. But if you could actually go back to I was just going to point out, if we go back to the DTO,
Yep.
yeah, that there to the DTO, and then we can also look at the reducers, the what is it called, resolvers. But first, let's go there to a DTO. The reason is just that I wanted to show what renaming might look like, or what ignore might look like, and not really go too deeply into the reasons, because we're not using it here. But for example, if we didn't want to resolve ID, but we still wanted it to be there, we didn't want ID to be required whenever we're receiving it, but we still want to do validation based on the DTO object whenever we're receiving a product. We could put ignore as an attribute, as a is that what they're called? They're attributes in C# instead of decorators. I think it is. It's an
It
attribute.
is yeah, attributes.
Yeah. Oh, after line 11, you can put ignore in square braces, and it would just ignore it. Or if you wanted to render it, but you didn't want to render it as ID, for example, if you wanted to render it as product ID, you could call that on line 12 product ID, and then up above it, you could say source member as a, in your decorator, in your attribute, source member, and then that's actually like a function. It's a functional attribute. And so you would pass it the source property. So that would be source member and then pass the string ID. So then it would know to go from ID to product ID and from product ID back in the reverse map. So those are just a couple of simple demonstrations of extensions. There's an additional one, which I think Swamy is a little more, we had talked about in preparation for this. So maybe he can share this a little bit more easily or as well. If you go over to the resolvers, to the resolver where we're doing the map, that's
In the
is that where
map
we would?
context.
Yeah. So let's say we wanted to create a combination of ID and category. How would we do that from here? I think this is the place to do it.
Oh, okay. So like a first name, last name into full name. Is it what you're speaking
Yeah,
about,
that's
Robbie?
right. Well, in our case, it would probably be something like category and ID.
Oh yeah. So so basically, like if you see that if you search for this, the result property name. So one of the thing is like how do you combine two fields, or the key thing is like you have to hit this method where you say that okay, you're saying that create map between the DTO and the entity, or a entity and DTO reverse map also. But you're saying that okay, for this particular member, for that particular member, you're saying that destination dot name, you're saying that okay, bring both first name and last name and put it into this one. So similarly, if at all, if you have a different property name, the one is like a uh, product ID, and one is like PROD ID or something like that, then you can specifically mention that okay, for this particular object, get it from this, uh, okay, and do a
Yeah.
map and some kind of other transformation, Robbie, which you are talking about, where you want to translate something like string to int and into string, or some kind of different representation from what it is. This is the other use case which you are speaking, which you were talking last Saturday when we are doing this. It's
Yeah.
something similar, isn't it? You do a map from and you did the transformation. Instead of string, you can do a convert.int or something and give a string numeric value and put it there. You can elaborate on that, Robbie.
Well, no, yeah. So I think that's correct. There are different ways that you can do this. I think that you can also apply those through attributes, but or at least um, it may be possible to apply those through attributes. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but some combination for sure. Um,
So okay.
so yeah, I think that's more than enough, because we're not, as you can see in our code currently, we're not actually using those details yet. Um, although we are using the ability to selectively display only the properties that we intend.
Right. So the next thing we will go to the final section is like we execute it and see this in action. Okay. So let me go to the repo and double click this and put a debugger in line 28. We'll execute this, and then I think we can uh, go ahead with the Q&A. If we have anything online, we'll ask them to go for the Q&A. Okay, so I'll do a get products and try it out and execute it. Now you see this, if you observe the products, and that products has got, if you get into see into the products, you see that you have the modified by, modified date, and created by, and created date time, which we don't want to expose this to regular customer of that e-commerce or regular user. That's the thing which admins need to worry. And then when we spit this content out, you see that we stripped out those values, because we did a transformation from entity to data transfer object. So in that case, what happened is it stripped off all those values from the it stripped out all those values from this entity to data transfer object. That's one good advantage.
Yeah.
Anything to add on this, Robbie?
No, I think that was a beautiful demonstration because there you're actually demonstrating it both in the source code on the way out, and then after the return, we switch over to the browser. You can actually see the result
Yeah,
of the transfer.
exactly. I mean, we are running short of time, as we did a deep dive on Docker
Yeah.
volume mount, but that's we will revisit that in the next episode. And we planned it something on the Docker Compose to do a deep dive on the Docker Compose, which we will park it. And we had a plan to execute. We did some of the improvements, but I think we'll do it in the session for episode 4, where we'll show how do you get it from the Docker Hub into Azure Container Instance, Docker Hub to multi-container in-app service, and Docker Hub to AKS. And we did work on this, but we are lagging time. We did Azure Kubernetes. We have a Terraform. We have a GitHub Actions, but we would like to show that we'll take a baby steps, but no hurry. We'll come back step by step. But what is coming up in the 4th episode, we will cover whatever is left out, the Docker Compose and 3 varieties of deployment. And then you can see that we'll use record instead of in the product DTO, and we will have a unified response. I think we'll stick to those two because we need to focus on basic Terraform, creating the Kubernetes cluster and deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster. We already have some piece to discuss on volume mount. We didn't showcase the exact thing. So in the next episode, we will not discuss anything theory, because theory we already captured it there step by step. We'll execute those commands. We'll create a dummy container. We'll dismantle it. Again, when you recreate, you'll lose the database. So that's when we build the case, saying that okay, if you have a volume mount behind this, you will not lose it. We'll build that, and we'll showcase the Docker Compose and
That would be good.
Azure. Yeah, that will showcase that, and Docker Azure Container Instance, and Docker containers inside the app service and Kubernetes. We'll see that. If time permits, we'll focus on the GitHub, or we'll push it to the next episode, but we'll take a baby steps. We want people to get a lot of the knowledge, and we'll take it from there. uh, Back to you, Robbie and Jonny.
Jonny, were there any questions that came up in that process? We kind of talked straight through.
No, there was no questions as such. I was watching intently. I think one of the things that came up in my mind, something that's caught me out a couple of times in the past on Docker logs, is that I think by default they're not circular logging, or they're not kind of restrained in any way. And there's ways that you can kind of constrain that to, like a file size, so that your logs basically don't fill up your storage essentially, which is one. Maybe we'll look at that then on the next episode. But no, I was watching intently, guys. A lot of this, from my point of view, hence the show When Ops Meets Dev. I am Ops, and you've taken me through a hardcore dev session today, so I appreciate that, guys. It's good to see under the hood with a lot of these things, as I'm sure a lot of the spectators are kind of getting an appreciation for. So no questions as such. That was great.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Cool.
So I'm eagerly waiting for the third Friday. This is the first Friday. I'm eagerly waiting for third Friday, so that we'll work on the volume mount. We'll showcase the Docker Compose, Docker Compose override, and Azure Container Instance, multi-containers in app service, deploying to the Azure Kubernetes service AKS, and access everything through Postman. One Postman collection. You will access it locally. You will access it in Azure Container Instance. You access it from the app service. You access it from the Azure Kubernetes service. Pronouncing itself, I'm feeling tired. I need an extra juice, a glass of juice.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know.
No, Swamy, Robbie, that was absolutely awesome. Thanks again for today's episode. 17th of June, I think it looks like our next episode will be. So I'll be catching up with you guys next week.
Yes,
but,
sir.
Yeah, we'll call it for today then. Nice to see you both.
Good to see you guys.
Oh, I would like to appreciate. Take 1 minute to appreciate Robbie very much because he has got some eye infection and a little bit of cold, but he took an extra pen. I really appreciated Robbie you
I-
doing this
I
episode
powered
with
through
us.
it. I powered through it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Good work, guys. Right, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.
Very good. Bye, guys.
Have a good night.